The wind had already snapped 3 trees on Meridian Avenue when Clara pressed her 7-year-old daughter against the gas station wall and prayed the awning would hold. She had $47, 1 duffel bag, and a mandatory evacuation notice she couldn't afford to obey. She tried the Hargrove Grand, the nicest hotel still lit on that block. Walked through the automatic doors dripping wet, her daughter shaking against her hip. The clerk looked her up and down, took exactly 4 seconds, then told her every room was full. They weren't. What Clara didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that a man in a charcoal overcoat was standing 40 feet behind her, watching the whole thing unfold. Silent. He owned the building. Every floor, every room, every decision that clerk just made. And he remembered faces. Stay with me, because what he did next didn't just change Clara's night. It ended a career. But none of this would have happened if that front desk clerk had made a different choice. 48 hours earlier, Clara Reyes was 34 years old. She lived in a second-floor apartment on the east side of Gulfport, Mississippi. A narrow 2-bedroom with a ceiling fan that wobbled and a front door that stuck every time the humidity climbed above 80%. Climbed above 80% most days. She worked the early shift at Sunrise Linen Services, a commercial laundry facility 6 blocks from the port. She folded hotel sheets for $9.40 an hour, 40 hours a week, no overtime, no benefits. Her daughter's name was Mia, 7 years old, gap-toothed, obsessed with sea turtles and the color orange. She carried a small spiral notebook everywhere she went. She called it her science book, even though most of the pages were covered in crayon drawings of animals she'd made up. The notebook had a turtle on the cover. Clara had bought it for $2 at the Dollar Tree on Henderson Avenue. That notebook was the first thing Mia grabbed when Clara told her to pack. The last thing, and the only thing, as it turned out, that would matter by the end of all of this. 6:14 a.m., Thursday. 48 hours before landfall. Clara was already at the facility when her supervisor, a compact, no-nonsense woman named Darlene, pulled her aside between sorting carts. "They're calling it a Category 3, Darlene said. "Maybe 4 by the time it hits. You got somewhere to go." Clara thought of her sister in Hattiesburg, 3 hours north. But her sister's apartment had flooded last spring and was still waiting on repairs. She thought of her mother, but her mother was in a memory care facility in Biloxi, 12 miles closer to the coast. "I'll figure it out," Clara said. She always said that. It was the most exhausting sentence in the English language. By noon, the mandatory evacuation order had been issued for Zones A and B. Clara's apartment sat on the edge of Zone B. She had $47 in her wallet, the last of what remained after rent, after Mia's school supply fees, after the inhaler refill that insurance only partially covered. She packed the duffel bag in 11 minutes. Clothes for 3 days. Mia's asthma inhaler. Her own blood pressure medication. A photograph of her and Mia from the previous Easter, taken outside the church on Delaney Street. And the notebook, of course. Mia had already tucked it under her arm before Clara could even ask. They took the bus because the car, a 2009 Civic with a slow coolant leak, had been sitting in the lot behind the laundry for 3 weeks with a check engine light. Clara hadn't had the money to investigate. The bus ran twice in the next hour. Both times they were turned away. Overcapacity. Clara walked to the evacuation shelter 2 miles up on Jefferson Boulevard. The line stretched around the building. A volunteer at the door told her the cots were full. He looked genuinely sorry. She believed him. That made it worse. The rain started at 4 p.m. Not the hurricane that was still coming. Just the outer bands. Just the warm-up. Clara stood under the canopy of a closed pharmacy with Mia pressed against her side, scrolling through her phone with 1 bar of signal, trying to find a hotel with availability within walking distance. The Bayview Suites, $189 a night. No vacancy. The Portside Inn, $214. No vacancy. The Sleep and Stay on Route 90. No vacancy. And then the Hargrove Grand. The website showed availability. 1 room, a standard double, $127 a night. She had 47, but she walked there anyway, because sometimes, Clara had learned, If you stood in front of a person and looked them in the eye, things worked out differently than they did over the phone. Sometimes. The Hargrove Grand was the kind of hotel that had a revolving door and a chandelier in the lobby. Marble floors. A man at the entrance in a burgundy coat. Clara walked through the revolving door with Mia's hand in hers. Both of them wet through, the duffel bag dark with rain. The lobby was warm. It smelled like cedar and something floral. Mia looked up at the chandelier and whispered, "Mom, it's like a jellyfish." Clara almost smiled. The front desk was staffed by a single clerk, a young man, mid-20s, with a pressed collar and a name tag that read Derek. Derek looked up as Clara approached. She saw it happen in real time, the almost invisible recalibration behind his eyes. The way his posture shifted. Not rude, not loud, just closed. "Good evening," he said. "Do you have a reservation?" "I don't," Clara said. "But your website showed a standard double available." "I was hoping." "I'm sorry," Derek said. He didn't let her finish. "We're at capacity. We have a large group booking for the evening. I'm afraid there's nothing available." Clara looked at him for a moment. "Your website." "Websites don't always update in real time," he said. Smooth, practiced, like he'd said it 100 times before in 100 different directions. "Please," Clara said, quietly. "I have my daughter with me. There's a hurricane coming." "I understand," Derek said. "I'd suggest the Red Cross shelter on Jefferson. They're equipped for." "The shelter is full," Clara said. A pause. "I'm sorry," Derek said again. And that was it. No call to a manager. No checking a back system. No second thought. Clara took Mia's hand and walked back toward the revolving door. What neither of them saw, what Derek hadn't noticed either, was the man sitting in the leather chair in the far corner of the lobby. He'd been there for 40 minutes, nursing a coffee, reading nothing, watching everything. His name was James Whitfield. He was 61 years old. He had the kind of stillness that came from a life that had forced him to be very, very patient. He was also, as of 14 years ago, the sole owner of the Hargrove Grand and the 6 other properties that bore his family's name along the Gulf Coast. James Whitfield watched Clara push through the revolving door with her daughter. He watched Derek turn back to his screen. He set down his coffee, very slowly. He had grown up in a house without heat in Pascagoula, Mississippi, in the winter of 1974. He had been 9 years old. His mother had worked 2 jobs and still sometimes had to choose between the electric bill and groceries. He knew what it looked like when a woman had already made every choice available to her before she walked through a door. He recognized it like a language he'd never forgotten. Outside, Clara found a gas station 2 blocks down with an awning wide enough to stand under. The wind was picking up. Mia didn't complain. She never complained. She was 7 years old and she'd already learned, the way children of struggling parents learn very early, that some things just were what they were. But she was shivering. And at one point she opened her notebook, that orange-covered notebook, and started drawing. "What are you drawing, baby?" Clara asked. "A turtle," Mia said, "because they carry their house with them, so they're never stuck." Clara felt something press hard against the inside of her chest. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in a long time, not because she didn't feel it, but because there wasn't room. Back inside the Hargrove Grand, James Whitfield had walked to the front desk. Derek straightened when he saw him. "Mr. Whitfield." "The woman with the child," James said. "How many standard doubles do we have available tonight?" A pause. We have some rooms reserved for contingency, but I didn't think." "How many?" 31, sir." James looked at Derek for a long moment. Not angry, just measuring. "Find her," James said. "Bring her back in. Put her and her daughter in 114. No charge." "Of course," Derek said. He was already reaching for the phone. "I'll call." "You'll go yourself," James said. "You look a person in the eye when you correct a mistake." Derek found them under the gas station awning 4 minutes later. He came with an umbrella. He came without the practiced smile. "Ma'am," he said, "I need to ask you to come back inside." He hesitated. "I made an error. There is a room available. It's yours, no charge, for however long the storm requires. Clara looked at him. She'd been looked at with pity before. This wasn't pity. This was something closer to shame. Why? She asked. Derek didn't look away. Because I should have looked harder the first time, he said. I'm sorry. Mia looked up at him with her notebook clutched to her chest. Is the chandelier still on? She asked. Derek blinked. Yes, he said. It's still on. Okay, Mia said and took Clara's hand. Room 114 was on the ground floor. It had 2 queen beds, a working heater, and a window that looked out on the courtyard. Clara sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the wind build outside and felt, for the first time in 3 days, like the floor was solid beneath her. Mia fell asleep within 20 minutes, notebook open on the pillow beside her, a half-finished turtle on the page. Clara didn't sleep. At 11 p.m., there was a soft knock at the door. She opened it. James Whitfield was standing in the hallway. He held a tray, 2 bottles of water, a wrapped sandwich, a cup of soup from the kitchen. I didn't want to send anyone else, he said simply. Clara took the tray. You own this hotel, she said. It wasn't a question. I do, he said. Why were you in the lobby? I'm in my lobbies more than people know, he said. I find that you understand a thing better when you watch it from a quiet corner. Clara looked at him. I had $47, she said. That was everything. I know, he said. There was a long silence. My mother worked laundry, he said. 30 years. She folded other people's sheets in a facility on the coast. She never once complained about the work. He paused. I built the first Hargrove because I wanted to build something she could walk into and feel like she belonged. Clara didn't say anything. What you experienced tonight should not have happened in one of my buildings, James said. I'm going to fix it. He meant it. The storm made landfall at 3:47 a.m. as a Category 3. Meridian Avenue lost 4 more trees. 3 storefronts lost their windows. Clara's apartment building lost part of its roof. Room 114 held through all of it. Mia slept through most of the storm, one hand curled around her notebook. Epilogue. 6 months later, the Hargrove Grand reopened its east wing in March. On the wall near the front desk, between the elevator and the concierge station, there was a new framed policy, printed in clean black type on ivory paper. It read, Emergency Accommodation Policy. In the event of a declared natural disaster or public emergency, any individual or family requiring shelter will be accommodated at no charge, subject to available rooms. This is not optional. This is not at the discretion of any single staff member. This is the policy of every Hargrove property. 7 hotels. 1 policy. No exceptions. Derek was no longer employed by any of them. James Whitfield had not been loud about that part. He rarely was. Clara Reyes now worked in the administrative office at Sunrise Linen Services, a position that opened up in December, that she'd applied for on a Tuesday, been interviewed on a Thursday, and been offered on a Friday. $15.20 an hour. Benefits. Steady hours. She'd moved into a new apartment on the north side of Gulfport. Higher ground. 2nd floor. A ceiling fan that didn't wobble. Mia had started 2nd grade. Her teacher had written a note home in October. Mia is one of the most observant students I've had. She notices things other children walk right past. Clara had kept the note in the same pocket as the Easter photograph. One afternoon in early spring, Mia came home and set her notebook on the kitchen table. A new one now, the 3rd since the orange-covered one had finally worn through. She opened it to a fresh page and drew a sea turtle. Carefully, deliberately. Then she wrote 3 words underneath it in her best 7-year-old handwriting. They carry everything. Clara looked at it for a long time. Then she sat down next to her daughter at the kitchen table, in their apartment on higher ground, and felt, not for the first time now, but still, like the floor was solid beneath her. It was a feeling she intended to keep. If this story moved you, if you believe in dignity over indifference, you know what to do. Stories like Clara's deserve to be heard.